the Biden-Afghanistan debacle. It continues. It's going to continue for the foreseeable future, in large part because there's still an open question about whether there are tens of thousands of American citizens who are stranded over there in Kabul in Afghanistan. We've been hearing a lot of speculation about what the total number here is. And, sometimes if you are on one side of the political aisle, you might favor a number that serves your political ends. And the same might happen if you're on the other side of the political aisle. And so you have some difference of opinions about what the total number of stranded Americans are. But we do have some unity now in Joe Biden's America. CNN and Fox News are agreeing it's at least in the tens of thousands. So CNN gives us a little bit of a headline here. And Joe Biden's in trouble when CNN is flipping the script and doing an about face on him. He was clearly their candidate of choice. And now they're telling us that the Biden administration, faces daunting odds of pulling off a massive Afghanistan evacuation in just 2 weeks. This article was posted Wednesday, August 18th. Biden administration is still struggling to answer basic questions about whether it can successfully evacuate tens of thousands of Americans and vulnerable Afghans. They set themselves a deadline of August 31st, which is coming up very soon. On Tuesday, U.S. officials gave us some details. We talked about some of those yesterday at a White House press briefing. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that they're relying on a commitment from the Taliban. We got to make sure that the Taliban stay happy because they have to allow for safe passage to the airport in Kabul. Otherwise, the American citizens are not going to be able to get there. So the Taliban, they've surrounded the entire airport. They control the entire capital. And so sort of relying on them to allow those tens of thousands of Americans who are citizens who were brought over there by this country to be a part of the war effort, to be a part of the nation building effort, to be a part of whatever they were doing over there. The U.S. government encouraged them, facilitated it, brought them over there in many cases. Should have an obligation to take them back. A lot of people will say, well, no, these are just Afghanis. No, they're tens of thousands of Americans, of American citizens. And the government has the utmost duty to make sure that American citizens' lives are protected. And it sounds like we're kind of relying on the Taliban to help facilitate this goal, according to Mr. Oxford, Jake Sullivan over there. So CNN is obviously... well, they're not really biased, but so we'll say they're pretty accurate. But Fox News is obviously clearly biased, but they're in total alignment with what CNN has to say. They say that the Taliban claims it's going to be more moderate, but the killings continue in Afghanistan. That's weird. I wonder why there may have been a misconception about that. Afghans are also skeptical of the Taliban's claims. This week, the Taliban is encouraging women to return to work and girls to go back to school, wear headscarves before they head out. But a new photo just popped up of a woman lying in blood. Picture around her. She was shot and killed for going out without a burqa. So there's some of those women's rights that the Biden administration is very excited about. Earlier on Tuesday, an Afghan former State Department contractor told Fox News that the Taliban fighters had set up checkpoints all throughout Kabul, in some cases beating civilians trying to get to the airport and escape the country. And as many, according to Fox News, as many as 11,000 Americans remain in the country as of Tuesday. Biden administration is scrambling to arrange flights. And we're going to take a look at what the U.S. Embassy, the actual U.S. government embassy in Kabul, has to say to those stranded Americans here in a minute. But let's go back to CNN now, because we have this little bit of a unity between CNN and Fox. Wow, what a beautiful country this is. Both say that Biden is a disaster. And now they are confirming it's at least in the tens of thousands. Might be multiple tens of thousands. Fox News says it might be 11,000 Americans. But the question is, now that the Taliban has surrounded the entire airport, well, how do they move anywhere? How do they even get over there in order to hop on an airplane to bail? Well, let's listen in with Clarissa Ward. She's over from CNN. We saw her earlier this week. She was the woman who on pre-Taliban day was able to not wear her hijab. Now that the Taliban have taken over, she is hijabbed up. And so we're going to listen in on what she has to say. She's telling us about the situation and what it looks like for just everyday average people who are trying to, get out of a war zone. Here she is.
We also were just accosted by people. John, it's so heartbreaking. Everybody coming up to us with their papers, their passports, saying, please, I worked at Camp Phoenix, I worked at this camp, I was a translator, help me get in, help me get to America, help me get my CIV, my visa to get out of the country. And then the Taliban would just come through. At one stage, this one fighter just lifted his gun up in the air as if he was about to start firing rounds. So we had to run and take cover And then, the most frightening moment for our team came when our producer, Brent Swales, was taking some video on his iPhone. 2 Taliban fighters just came up with their pistols and they were ready to pistol whip him. And we had to intervene and scream, and it was actually another Taliban fighter who came in and said, no, don't do that, they're journalists. But, I mean, really, I've covered all sorts of crazy situations. This was mayhem. This was nuts. This is impossible for an ordinary civilian, even if they have their paperwork. No way they're running that gauntlet. No way they're going to be able to navigate that. It's very dicey, it's very dangerous, and it's completely unpredictable. There's no order, there's no coherent system for processing people, separating those with papers from those who don't have papers. And honestly, to me, it's a miracle that more people haven't been very, very seriously hurt.
Wow, ringing endorsement there from CNN. Wow, so it's never seen anything quite like it. All the disorder, all of the very, very smart people from Oxford and Yale Law School, and all the people who are very, very aggressive with making sure that the Taliban is inclusive and very diverse in their I guess totalitarian dictatorship. Where were they on this whole point? Where was all the contingency planning? Where was all of the very intellectual adults in the room that the country has been apparently screaming for over the last 4 years? Where were they on all of this? Not so good. Even CNN is upset about it. Now, on another show, they're going to play some of the same footage, but this gentleman is also very upset about it, saying that it is basically chaos, it's catastrophe. Miss Clarissa was earlier in the morning, and then this one was later this afternoon, about 2 p.m. Eastern time. Let's listen to see if the conditions have improved at all.
What are you hearing?
Chaos. Absolute chaos. Pandemonium. There is tens of thousands of people who have surrounded the airport, desperate to get in. There are Taliban checkpoints within 100 meters of U.S. Marines, and you're right, they're beating people in the crowds. I had a friend in the crowd last night who got beaten by Taliban soldiers with chains, and the Americans just have to stand there and do nothing. They have to stand there and watch it. The Americans are being forced to use tear gas, to fire warning shots. By the way, every time I hear those gunfire go off, all I can think of is those bullets have to come down somewhere. People could be inadvertently getting killed just by that gun.
All right, so you saw the same images again, and I know it's probably easy to sit back and go, oh well, this is just more war propaganda. This is all the neocons out there who are clamoring to send them all back in to Afghanistan, and they're just going to be dragging us right back into war. The public sentiment has already shifted on this. There are polls out today saying that many Americans are supportive of now sort of, doing this massive surge to go in and clean this thing up rather than let this thing, smolder into chaos. And there might be good justification for that. If the Taliban now have, let's say, 10,000 Americans there, that's a pretty sizable American hostage presence, wouldn't you say? And so that sort of ties the U.S. government's hands in many, many ways. Now they have the ability to sort of dictate terms. I mean, think about the prior hostage negotiation crises that this country has been through. And now the Taliban has 10,000 of them? Not too good. So what is the U.S. government doing now to get them all out of there? Let's take a look at what the U.S. Embassy has to say. This is from Afghanistan, out of Kabul. This is posted August 18th, and here's what they say. They say that their location here is in Kabul, Afghanistan, which I don't think is accurate anymore. I think their location is basically a website now because there is no embassy there. Good going. U.S. government provided flights are departing, they say. So this is, hey, I just happen to be a U.S. citizen. I'm a contractor. I went over there. I was doing, some sort of transitional work between the Afghan government, the U.S. government. I'm a citizen there. I've got my visa. Everything's fine. The evacuation happens urgently. Nobody knew that this whole thing was going to collapse instantaneously within basically a weekend. And so suddenly you're sitting there going, okay, well, the U.S. was here and there was security and order, and now the U.S. is not here, and I'm living in Talibanistan. Not so good. And so what do you do about that? Well, you say, well, I better look to the embassy. It's been like 4 days since we heard from the president on this thing on Monday. So maybe I can look to the embassy. Surely they've got it figured out now. We know that on Monday there were people falling out of Air Force airplanes who were hanging on to landing gear. So hopefully our very competent Department of Defense, U.S. Embassy, State Department, they've all got it figured out, right? Clearly it's been a few days, so finally, okay. So, oh honey, let's go and check out what the U.S. Embassy says, because the Taliban are right down the street Sounds like they might be knocking on our door next. Let's see what the update is. We go over here to the U.S. Embassy. This says the location is Kabul. Not really. U.S. government-provided flights are departing, this says. Okay, well, that sounds problematic. So I guess, honey, we better pack our bags. U.S. citizens and their spouses and unmarried children should consider traveling to HKIA, which is Hamid Karzai International Airport. And they give you some directions. Go to Camp Sullivan, then go to the South Traffic Circle, head 1 kilometer, turn right at Camp Sullivan. Please note that gate changes might change frequently. We're going to update you as necessary. By the way, in gigantic capital letters, the U.S. state government cannot ensure safe passage to the airport. So the last thing you really should be worried about is your gate change. Once you get to the airport, you can figure out your gate. The bigger problem is going to be making it into the property in the first place. They say further down the report that please be advised that a significant number of individuals have registered. Space on these flights is available on a first come, first served basis. So even if you do come, you make it through the Taliban checkpoints. What Clarissa said was a disaster. What the other guy said was a disaster. You're dodging bullets. You're dodging Taliban change. You finally make it in. Oh, sorry, flight's full. Oh, yeah, it's first come, first serve basis. You were a little bit too late. Sorry, you should have hurried last time. So you're going to have to sit there until we get a next plane that lands that may expire at the end of this month. We'll get to that in a minute. So they tell you, oh, no, you just may be required to wait at the airport for a significant amount of time until space is available. Okay, so at least you say, all right, fine. At least I can just pack up and get to the airport. At least if I get there, I'll be safe. I know that I'll get on an airplane and I'll be out of there soon enough. Perfect. All right. Well, they say don't call the embassy. We don't have any details or updates about the flight. So, okay, you can make it there. Who knows? They also say, by the way, don't travel to the airport until you've been informed by email that departure options exist. Okay, so now we're going to continue to provide updates to this message. So I guess just refresh your browser there if you're in Afghanistan. Well done. So now we've got a situation where apparently U.S. flights are departing, number one. So they're going. We've got a deadline coming up on August 31st. The U.S. government says, you better get your butts to the airport. But we can't make sure you get there safe. And you better hurry because it's on a first come, first serve basis. But also, don't leave yet until we tell you to leave. So it's just amazing. That's the planning from the U.S. Embassy. And you can go, the full link should be in the slides. But you can go pull the full order. That's their guidance from the U.S. government, from the brilliant intellectuals that thought this whole thing through. Well done. All right, so 10,000 Americans. Good luck heading to the airport. If you get there, maybe there's a flight, but don't leave yet. But you probably might want to because there's a deadline coming up August 31st. And the question is, well, you know that there's a deadline August 31st. You heard previously, because on yesterday's show, or maybe the day before that, we also heard from Jake Sullivan, NSA Oxford graduate, who is telling us that, well, look, we're going to try to get everybody out of here as soon as we can, but we're not going to make any commitments beyond August 31st because that's the deadline that Joe Biden set. That's what was negotiated with the Taliban. So now Jake Sullivan, well, we'll talk about that when we get there. August 31st is our cutoff date. And the reporters go, what? Excuse me? So another reporter asks again, yeah, that's basically what I said. Sorry. And then somebody else asked Jen Psaki about this later on in the day. And she confirms it as well. The one response should be from an American government would be, yes, we're going to protect every American citizen no matter what. We're going to do everything we can to take every American who is over there and bring them back to this country. Whether you can do it or not, right? That's what you say. And you actually do it if you're a competent, legitimate, moral government. But that's asking way too much. So at least just say the right thing and then botch it all in the background. They're not even doing that. They're just like, well, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. After August, you're on your own. So don't leave yet to come to the airport, but also flights are leaving, according to the embassy. So now, look, this is a very problematic situation. We've got a lot of Americans over there who are stranded that don't really know what to do. All sorts of conflicting responses. The U.S. government, though, at least the Department of Defense, they're on it. They're gonna solve this. This was all incorrect yesterday, but they got it figured out today, right? So we're gonna check in with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who is going to be asked the same question. Okay, Mr. Austin, Mr. Secretary of Defense, now that you know how this whole thing is unfolding, it's been a few days, you're going to get all of the Americans out of there, right?
We're going to get everyone that we can possibly evacuate it. And I'll do that as long as we possibly can until the clock runs out or we run out of capability.
And you heard at the very end that little clip, the reporter's like, again? Like, we heard it again? Until the clock runs out. We're going to do everything we can until the clock runs out. That's the deadline that the Taliban have given us. So, unfortunately, since they have 10,000 hostages, yeah, you're right. We don't really have much we can do here. Not much to negotiate about. They have 10,000 people. So, they've given us until August 31st, and that's all I got. We're going to run up to the clock. We're going to play our best game. Hopefully, we pull this one out. Lloyd Austin. Now, he cares a lot about lives, especially American lives. We know this because this is how he dresses when he goes to formal ceremonies to get his little pins and badges here, whatever that medallion is. Probably very important. I'm not trying to disrespect that medallion, but this is how he, this is how he thinks about his contingencies. Anytime he needs to go, sort of serve himself, he dons a mask. There might be 2 masks on under there. I don't even know. Also face mask shields as well, along with humiliating all of the rest of the, I guess maybe his support staff there. Not to be disrespectful to them, but this man is disrespecting the military. This man is disrespecting the entire United States government. He should be fired. Or he should actually resign, but he should be fired immediately for this. He's the Department of Defense secretary. 10,000 Americans are being abandoned behind enemy lines, and we're going to run it out until the clock runs out. Okay. That's our leadership here in this government. Outstanding. But the face masks, though, definitely want to make sure that our Marines and our men and women of the armed services are face masked up. Probably need some more bubble wrap and cellophane as well. So that's Lloyd Austin. Now, he gets asked another question. Somebody says, okay, hey, so you're the Department of Defense, America's most accomplished aspects is we've got a pretty powerful military. Sounds like, I guess your plan is that we're just going to negotiate with the Taliban and they're just going to, I guess, tell us whether or not they're going to give us our own citizens back. Here's Lloyd Austin.
And where do you take that? I mean, how far can you extend into Kabul, and how long does it take to flow those forces in to be able to do that?
So it sounds like you're saying this depends on diplomacy with the Taliban. That's it. That's our only option, is getting them to agree to do this.
Well, let me add something here, Helene.
He looks around. So it sounds like we're just negotiating with the Taliban. You know that whole policy, like America doesn't negotiate with terrorism and all that stuff. It sort of sounds like you just negotiate. He goes, well, he looks around. Well, good. It's a good point. General, it goes over to General Miley, and then he just, rambles about, we've got more contingencies and forces over here and all of this stuff. And so it was an absolute disaster. But you can understand why Lloyd Austin doesn't want to go back into Kabul or Afghanistan in the first place, largely because the Taliban have all of the U.S. military equipment now. They've got it all. They've got large swaths of it. So breaking, we got the Taliban now. They seized an A-29 Super Tucano light aircraft, attack aircraft. We got an MD-530F helicopter, which is a light military helicopter. Those have both been captured at another airport. Looks like in a different precinct, sort of. And so they're posing with these. Let's see what they've got here. They got some good loot here in this crate. Afghanistan, the Super Tucano was declared the winner of a light air support contract competition. So let's see. There was a bunch of these were bought in 2018 for $427 million. Yeah, so that's good. Those ended up over in Afghanistan. Pretty good. They conduct airstrikes. Good in combat. First time the Afghan military has dropped a laser-guided weapon against the Taliban. Well, not anymore. Now the Taliban have that airplane. So that's a good pickup. That's good loot. That's going to increase their armor quite a bit. Now, the Super Tucano, it's also relatively inexpensive. Usually just goes for about $10 million. Price goes up, though, if it's a military-equipped variant. Those are between $20 and $30 million. So, look, do these guys know how to fly this thing? No, of course they don't. Are they going to? Do you think this guy's going to be a pilot and hop in there and, go after Afghan people? Probably not, but that's okay because they have a $30 million aircraft there. which is a nice chunk of change. And it's very legitimizing, isn't it? Now they're building out their Air Force, and presumably they're going to be able to get some training from the Afghanistan pilots who just decided that we're Taliban now. As soon as they were knocking on the door, excuse me, Afghan Air Force. Yes, how can I help you? Oh, we're the Taliban. Oh, so am I. That's so weird. I just changed sides like 2 minutes ago. So yeah, let me show you how to fly that thing. It's going to be a lot of fun. Get your guns. Let's go for a little loop-de-loo up there in the sky. That will complement their trips to the amusement parks that they were on earlier in the week. So that was a good pickup. Now, MD-500 also is a pretty good pickup here. This cost $2.4 million. That's been in production for quite some time. This is produced here by the United States, so that's a nice helicopter. And it's about $3 million a pop. Been around for quite some time, and yeah, they've got one of those too, so that'll be fun. Over here, they've got a whole, looks like they got a Blackhawk, actually. So Blackhawks, we know those are pretty expensive. Cost to the Air Force, another about $10.2 million bucks, primarily being used by the United States. And the Taliban, they picked one up over at the Kandahar airport. We can see what that looks like.
دا دا ولاړه د څلور نه ان شاء الله هغه طرف ته ولاړ دي دې طرف ته راسم ولسا دا دې څو ولاړ دي ښه یو هو
اذن یا so that's the first one. Oh, there's number 2. Got number 2 now. Oh, and let's see if there's anything else. Is there anything else over there? Oh yeah, look, number 3 and number 4. Oh yeah, so 4 Blackhawks. Oh, that's good. We got 4 Blackhawks now in possession of the Taliban, and that's just in one video that lasted about 15 seconds. So presumably there's a lot more of that is floating around Afghanistan and now in possession of the Taliban. Well done there, Secretary Austin. Speaking of Secretary Austin, some U.S. senators are unhappy with him, as they should be. They sent a letter to him today that says, dear Secretary of Defense, a couple problems that we have. We got grave concern regarding the status of those U.S. military gear that was left behind as a result of our poorly executed withdrawal. We're horrified to see the Blackhawks in the hands of the Taliban, UH-60. Highly unconscionable that high-tech military gear paid by the U.S. is going to end up in their hands. Here is what we want. We request the detailed information about all the following. Full account of all the equipment provided to Afghan armed forces in the last year. All military equipment, wherever it came from. All U.S. equipment that remains operational. A list of what military equipment that has been seized by the Taliban. An assessment of how long it will take the Taliban to use each of the captured gear. An assessment on the likelihood that they're going to seek to work with Russia, Pakistan, Iran, China for training, fuel, infrastructure necessary to use it. Any efforts by the administration to, stop any of this garbage, signed off on by Grassley, Tillis, Haggerty, Johnson, Scott, Braun. Let's see who else here. Tuberville. Okay, so the U.S. Senate is on it, and they're going to be asking some questions. And this is just the first part of it. There should be audits on all of this. Where did it all come from? Who authorized the contracts? Who got the contracts? Make sure that the gear is as accounted for as we can, and then prosecute the people who embezzled the funds. It's the only way there's going to be any justice here. But there won't be, because it's all just a giant slush fund, isn't it? Now, the DOD was out talking about not saving Americans. But the State Department, well, they're really busy here. They're actually getting down to some hard work. They're making sure that this is at the forefront of the world's concern. And so they drafted a letter today, the State Department, the Biden State Department. They wrote a very stern letter, and they got some agreement from other people throughout the world. A lot of different people are involved in this. Albania, Argentina, Australia chimed in, Canada, Brazil, El Salvador, Ecuador, New Zealand, Norway, Senegal, Switzerland, the UK. Oh my gosh, they're asking for the Taliban to protect the rights of women and children. Isn't that nice? It's just really, really powerful. Let's see here what they wrote in their statement. August 18th, a joint statement on the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. And so they're going to put this out for immediate release, which is really good. Hopefully the Taliban press corps gets a copy of this. The White House is posting this, forwarded from the State Department. Noted, we are deeply worried about Afghan women and girls, their rights to education, work, and freedom of movement. We call on those in positions of power and authority across Afghanistan to guarantee their protection. Has she been watching the news at all the last couple days? That's the Taliban now. Positions of power and authority across Afghanistan. That's the Taliban. And we already know how they view these issues. We talked about it yesterday on the show. So they say that Afghan women and girls deserve all of this stuff and the abuse should be prevented. Okay. They're going to monitor closely how any future government ensures the rights and freedoms that have become an integral part of women in Afghanistan over the last 20 years. That's great. That's good. So this woman is going to be monitoring them now. Now that they have thousands, tens of thousands, arguably, of American citizens that are basically pseudo hostages right now because there's no way to get them out of there. What is she going to do about it? What is this lady going to do about any of this? Here's her stern warning to the Taliban.
Yesterday, the Taliban held a press conference where they claimed they intend to allow women to work and study, but only within what they called their, quote, frameworks. The United States and the international community will be vigilant in monitoring how any future government in Afghanistan ensures the rights and freedoms that women and girls in that country have come to expect.
Oh my gosh.
The United States joined 20 other nations this
Gemeinschaft is.
Oh my gosh. So this woman is beyond, I don't even know what to say. You know, I try not to be mean on this show, but she has not a serious person or just not very intelligent. I don't know what she's doing. I think she might be, I think this might be cosplay. This might be actually a cosplay clip. I'm not real sure. It says she's the deputy secretary. She's got a name that confirms she's the deputy secretary. But I don't know what she's talking about because the Taliban that we've got 20 years of experience fighting, that we know a lot about them and know exactly why we went there in the first place was to sort of push them back and to make sure that America could spread American values and democracy and liberty and civil liberties for women and children and the human beings who want that in Afghanistan. We know exactly what the Taliban is. And so they just took over the country. And this actor, I think she's an actor or she's on I don't know what she's doing, but that's okay. Good effort. Now, you'll notice in the State Department's little written statement, a lot of countries signed on, like Canada, New Zealand, and Ecuador, and all of these other countries. But a couple countries didn't. May have remembered from that list that Germany wasn't on there. Now, Germany had some differing opinions on what's going on here. And we learned yesterday that Joe Biden wasn't even calling anybody. Hillary Clinton talked to the Canada guy. And Joe Biden's just kind of asleep at the wheel. But this is a politician from Germany who apparently is going to be sort of the heir apparent to Angela Merkel, so maybe the next chancellor of Germany. Here's what he had to say about the U.S. involvement and what this means to NATO. Let's see what he has to say, and then we're jumping into questions next. So get those fingers warmed up. Here it is from Germany.
Gemeinschaft, es ist evident, dass dieses Engagement der internationalen Gemeinschaft nicht erfolgreich war. Es ist das größte Debakel, das die NATO seit ihrer Gründung erleidet. Und es ist ein Epochenwechsel, vor dem wir stehen.
Says this is the biggest debacle in German. You may have picked that up. In German, the biggest debacle that NATO has ever seen, ever. And it's an epical change. I think he's right about that. And the country is rightfully upset about it, as we should be. All right, let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And a reminder, I got to move through these questions quickly. So if I don't get to you, I apologize. We've got Drearier Spider here, says, Rob, while I don't like to see my country get embarrassed on the world stage, we have no choice but to expose the gross incompetence of the Biden regime. Exactly right. Biden has no mandate to get most of his draconian agenda through, thanks to collapsing polls at the court of public opinion. Starts with brave folks willing to put the truth out like yourself. Thank you for your tireless work. You're a great commentator, great lawyer, great American, proud to support. Well, thank you, Drearier Spider. That's really nice, man. What a nice comment. Or woman, or whatever pronoun you prefer. We're very accommodating here. But I'm just joking. That was a really nice comment. Thank you for that. You know, and that's sort of what we're doing, right? We're not going to let them get away with this. We're not going to let them paper over this. Their faces have to be rubbed in this. That's the only recourse that we have. If they're going to come out here and do this to us over the last 20 years, there needs to be penalties for it. And it can't be just another, well, sorry about that. We'll do better next time and paper over the whole thing. There need to be consequences for it, and everybody who is involved with it should pay. Republicans and Democrats alike. They should all pay for it because they were all involved in it. Anybody who misled there are mothers and fathers and sons and brothers and daughters and sons who are missing their loved ones over this fake baloney war that we've been sold with no legitimate exit plan. And there are still tens of thousands of Americans over there. This is insane that there aren't already firings. All right. We've got Sergeant Bob says, Sergeant Bob is rarely speechless, but on this segment, he is. It is shocking. It is actually shocking that this is our government. We have John Berkelis Halgren is here, says, is there a national stress index? Do we have anything that measures general levels of anxiety? I don't remember seeing people this continually anxious since the threat of global thermonuclear war with the USSR. Afghan, COVID, election weirdness. Anyway, take care of yourselves. John, you're absolutely right about this. You know, and I was actually speaking to somebody who was talking about the catastrophic consequences that we are still bringing upon ourselves with all of this. She called it sort of an attachment syndrome, where you just, every single time you have this trauma, you sort of attach it a little bit, and people are going to start getting very sick. We're already seeing it. We saw the COVID breakdowns over the masks. We're seeing it over the vaccinations. People are going to get, it's going to continue to concentrate until people start snapping even further. You're right. Take care of yourselves. Robute says, Biden is such a horrible president. Anyone watching the Watchers community would be a better president than Biden. Joe should retire and go spend time with Hunter. Yeah, that's what he should do. LT13 says, Millie like vanilla in Austin today at the press conference. Millie and Austin. Yeah, Millie Vanilli. Yeah, it was it was really bad. Ice Wolf says, I always thought it was between me and my doctor, whether any medicine is right, not me and the government. That was on the next segment. Sergeant Bob says, got my voice back. As to Sleepy Joe, never try to teach a pig how to sing. It will only frustrate you and annoy the pig. We have this one from John Halgren, says, if we, quote, go back to Afghanistan, you can't just clean things up. You'd have to have a group ready to reclaim the country. That group doesn't exist. Afghanistan is stuck with Sharia law until they decide it's over. Yeah, and at this point, how do you sort of bolster or muster enough morale to make a real significant offensive back into Afghanistan? And how do you do that if there's 10,000 Americans who are sort of in the purview of Taliban control? Your hands are totally tied. This thing is beyond. Basically, at that point, your only solution is diplomacy with the Taliban, which is maybe where they were going with this all along. Kenny 1B says, New York Times reported that the intelligence community correctly predicted the swift collapse as the U.S. withdrew. They correctly predicted that the military would essentially disband, give no resistance. New York Times concluded Biden ignored the intelligence warnings. I've seen those headlines as well, and I don't have anything to disagree with that. I think that what you're going to see here is a lot of finger pointing. I still think that the DOD, the generals, any of people in the intelligence community that I guess didn't tell us about the crumbling facade that Afghanistan was up until this point, they're all responsible for it. They sold us the idea that Afghanistan was not this bad. And it was. So they were selling us something that was a fraud. They should be held accountable for that. Let's see. Everyone needs to look up and notice very few women and children in those planes. That was from a no-namer. Want to know says, Rob, the state said embassy is at the airport. Oh, okay. So that one is there. So maybe they are in Kabul for the time being. Vienticus Prime says, 2020, the year of no hindsight, has led to 2021, the year of nothing but failure. But then again, it's not like someone has anything to gain from all these failures or anything. It's not like many people's lives were just tossed away to justify military action before. No, there's obviously nothing to see here. This is all just incompetence. Yeah, I see where you're going with that, Vienticus. I'd be curious as to what your prognostications about the underlying motivation might be. We have Screw the NSA says, is the news of the Taliban offensive covered in Afghanistan? If not, then I don't understand. Why didn't the contractors with the U.S. leave as soon as the Taliban were so successful? Well, I think it happened within 4 days or so. That's why nobody really was prepared for it. That's why people were hanging off of planes. Now, many of the contractors are going to get killed via lack of foresight and a horrible withdrawal. Considering the debacle, it shows how all the intelligence agencies are useless. should be disbanded. I think that's a pretty popular opinion now. Peely Wally says, watching the most voted for president ever lead this incredible mess is simply mind-boggling. What a ridiculous war it was. What a terrible waste of life. I had a friend that lost his life out there in 2009. Nothing like a long war to cover up the unusual happenings around September 11th. That's from Peely Wally. You know, you kind of do have to question everything a little bit more these days, don't you? Because we know how blatant the government is with their lies. You sort of have to question it all, especially if they told us for 20 years that, oh, there's progress in Afghanistan. No, we got a mission there. It's all good. Until it's not. Then it all comes crumbling down. Where else is there just a shallow facade ready to shatter? Paula MK says, so for 4 years of the previous administration, we had no foreign conflict. Peace deals in the UAE, record economic growth, secure borders in 8 months. Biden has blown out the economy. We got sick migrants flooding in at our borders, horrid conditions, destroyed American life in Afghanistan, not to mention the civilians. Need I go on? We have to ask ourselves why. Because people got offended on Twitter? Yeah. It is a curious thing, isn't it? Very, very curious. Thank you for that, Paula MK. Let's take some super chats over here. We had a couple. We got several of them coming in. We've got Clifford Barnes says, Rob, could Uncle Joe send the squad over there to tune in the Taliban? They're full of answers. Well, yeah, I mean, they should go over there and they should, you know, just sit them down and have a conversation about Talibanic supremacy. Maybe once they learn about privilege, they'll be a little bit more reasonable. That would be nice. Brody Z says, can we call a mulligan on this presidency? We are stuck in this weird Twilight Zone episode with an old dirty sock calling the shots. We're just getting started, folks. We're in year one. We haven't even crossed a full 12 months yet. This is terrible. Alex Bogey says, biggest mistake analysts have brought up was abandoning the Bagram Air Base. It was much easier to defend since it was in the mountains instead of a city. Also said, oh, very cool. So Alex also says, told my rep to form a committee to investigate. Yeah. There's going to be all sorts of tactical decisions that were made, and I'd be curious what the actual standards are there, right? Is there a gross negligence standard in the military? I don't know what that is. If you make a decision, like in this case, how do we decide that this was gross negligence, that this was, you know, criminal behavior, or there was something here that was more serious than just a whoops? How do you define what that is? Be curious. But very good to hear that, Alex. Appreciate the support here. Eddie Oliver is here, says, Rob, I'm a Gulf War era veteran, the first invasion of Iraq, and I'm utterly horrified by what I'm seeing. This is a complete and utter insanity. None of this makes any sense. Says, I know Biden picked his people based on the color of their skin and whether or not they were trans, but nobody can be this inept! Exclamation point. Yeah, you know, Eddie, I don't know, right? Is it just incompetence, or is there something a little bit more nefarious here? I don't know what's going on here, but thank you for your support, Eddie, as always. Another one from you was, I was 82nd Airborne Division. We could secure that airport easily in a couple hours. It's almost like Biden is failing intentionally. I tend to believe that, right? I do believe that the actual U.S. military is a competent thing, but the morons at the top of it, all of the double, triple maskers with the face shields, they don't know what they're doing. They're playing a fake game show. They think that this is like Twitter or something. It isn't. The State Department can't send nasty grands over to the Taliban and think that they care one whit about it. Unless they're just detached from reality. Unless they're just, I don't know who she's talking to, but that's not what the rest of us are talking about. It's ridiculous. We have Stephen Farrington is here, says, I love Robert Gruller. Well, I love Stephen Farrington. Thank you, Stephen. We have a couple other ones. Cope Stetic says, Biden knows the Taliban are excellent mask enforcers. It's to help fight COVID. Trust him. He knows what he's doing. Well, you know, I made this point yesterday. You know, those burqas are pretty much full body masks, which will cover you head to toe from COVID. So maybe they're onto something. Maybe Joe Biden wants to bring in those Afghanistani refugees and maybe install Sharia law here. Who knows? We got another one from Actual Izzy, says, hey, Rob, watching for a few months now and watch almost every night. The clips I miss, I listen to on my commute to work. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Actual Izzy. I appreciate that. Glad you're here. Glad you just joined us and stuck around. I do appreciate it. Curtis Bartle is here, says, distraction from real voting. Go Arizona. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more news coming out of Arizona, I think, here at the end of this month. I think was the deadline, August 31st. I could be wrong about that. Eddie Oliver says, we don't need diplomacy. We just need to take the airport, the key to the withdrawal. It's the only asset needed. There are many places around the globe that we secure surrounded by an enemy presence. Think Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, and I've also seen a lot of that, right? I'm not a military expert, but by any stretch, but a lot of people have said certainly if there was a will to go in and secure that airport and take control of that and take control of the city, that the U.S. could absolutely do that. But there is no will to do that from this administration. Now, as this continues to unfold, as we continue to see more and more horror, more and more stories of 10,000s of Americans who can't get out of the country, you may see Joe Biden and his administration have to do an about face on this and say, yeah, all right, we're going to go in there, because they have no leverage at this moment. The Taliban has all the leverage. The Taliban can just wait out until August 31st comes and goes, and then they've got whatever remainder of American citizens are there. And then what move does Joe Biden have after that point? What if there's an American citizen there on September 30th that says, you know what, this is awful, I need to get out of here. Can you help me? What do they say? No, we told you to get on a plane by August 31st. Sorry. It's what they're conveying right now, and it sounds awful. All right, thank you for those super chats. We're going to wrap up with a couple more here from locals. Kenny 1B says the Taliban can easily shell, mortar, launch artillery strikes on the crowds of people at the airport, but they have not. It would be a bloodbath, but the Taliban has refrained. Right. So they know they have the upper hand. They're being very diplomatic, and we'll see if that holds. Paula MK is here. Did you see Stephen Colbert saying that we have our very own Taliban on the Capitol? Must have missed that memo. Well, he would say something like that because he's not very intelligent. We have Kenny 1B says Taliban has captured an air force, yes, but operating, fueling it, all that has little to no ability. Wouldn't be too concerned about them using abandoned aircraft in an offensive manner. I think that's a good point, Kenny 1B. I think the bigger issue is, are they going to work with China? Are they going to work with the Afghan, the military? Is Iran going to funnel them resources so that they can use those equipments? I don't know. We'll see. LT13 says Taliban about to have a Chinese yard sale. There you go. With their new 4 Blackhawks. We've got Nadarb says, if you have time, 45-second video of all the guns and whatnot left behind. I'll cue that one up for another show, Nadarb. I probably have seen it. There's a lot of them going around. Government used deals. You can get a helicopter here for, oh, look at that. It's a deal. Slightly used helicopter, captured only once, $2.25 million. A bargain. Taliban discount. Love that. Kenny B says, the rank and file military have little faith and trust in Austin. First forcing them to take woke training and now a military blunder. Austin is probably out soon. Yeah, I think so too. He's got to go. No way that he can stick around. Look, 2G came in with a super chat, says, LOL, Curtis is probably right. Distraction from Arizona. In the next segment, we're going to get to COVID, which I think is a distraction from Afghanistan. So we are sort of stacking them up here a little bit. Tager Witziffy says, do you think the Taliban got on the planes to the USA? Probably. Did you see the plane? I don't think they were checking any papers. And then Beth Coddington says, hi, Robert. I will pray for all Americans here and worldwide. I hope many will join me. And I think that's a great point to leave off on that segment. Thank you for that, Beth. Very, very nice point, and I agree with you completely, right? As much as we can rub our incompetent leaders' faces in their debris, well, we got to remember that, we still have many people, American citizens over there and Afghani citizens who are good people that are all in a world of hurt right now as a result of our own incompetent government. And so we got to just remember, as we're analyzing these stories, we do so with a little bit of humanity and hope and pray and encourage the people who are doing the good work. There are still many, many thousands of competent Americans right now who are working very hard to get people to safety. We got to respect them. They're going to do amazing work in spite of the incompetence that exists. And so we want to continue to wish them love. Great questions. Thank you for all the support from locals and from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which I already said, and from YouTube. Great super chats from Beth, Tager Witziffy, several of them from many of you, Eddie Oliver, Cope Stetic, and we have Stephen Farrington. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of that support. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona, things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing. But you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching, and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.